Hello, everyone. Welcome to this information session on the 2017-18 ESSA Consolidated Application for Funding for LEAs. Our webinar is being presented by Corey Green's office, the Chief Commissioner for the Office of Grants, Compliance, and Oversight, and I'm Susan Patterson. So throughout the day, we're going to spend about 50 minutes talking about 3 specific schedules within the new consolidated application, and we will reserve 30 minutes or more at the end to take questions about schedules PS 3001, PS 3099, and schedule PS 3107. Please type your questions in the question box. All questions that you type into the question box will be answered in the order that they come during the Q&A session that follows the information slides of the webinar. So during our time together, we're going to do a quick overview of changes to state and federal policy and state and local agency responsibility under ESSA. We're going to talk briefly about the consolidated application, with priority emphasis on our 3 new schedules, 3001, 3107, and 3099. As you've heard before, the roles and responsibilities for state and local agencies under ESSA have changed significantly compared to our life under NCLB just a few short months ago. NCLB was very top-down, one-size-fits-all, with very strong federal controls. The Department of Education set standardized academic achievement measures for all schools and targets for annual yearly progress. Those schools that did not meet the federal AYP targets engaged in a 5-stage mandatory federal school improvement model. In that model, if you're familiar with school choice, with supplemental education services, and the other stages of AYP, you will have been familiar with NCLB. ESSA, however, has increased the state and local flexibility, state and local authority, but also responsibility for education programs within Texas. This slide provides you a summary of the types of changes that we saw both in EDGAR and in ESSA, and attempts to show you the relationship between these 2 sets of rules that guide your federal government grants that you're receiving from the Department of Ed that pass through TEA. So EDGAR was the new set of financial rules that provided states and local agencies more flexibility. It increased the monitoring responsibility of TEA, and it required LEAs to adopt sound financial management systems. Under ESSA, TEA was responsible for oversight, and the buzzword for LEAs, under EDGAR, and the buzzword for LEAs was internal controls. Those citations about internal controls, we remember well, were 2 CFR 200.302 to 303. In a similar move, ESSA brings both state and local agencies more flexibility. It puts more burden on state agencies for performance monitoring. It requires LEAs to increase or to enhance the types of guidance and technical assistance that you're providing schools. It increased TEA's oversight responsibilities. And the key word for us under ESSA will be performance monitoring. Both EDGAR and ESSA, in many ways, codified best practices. And in the presentation today, you will see a lot of those things that we had historically done as best practice now become the standard. I also want to point you to 2 CFR 200, 327, and 328. These are the 2 citations in EDGAR that give us some insight into the Department of Ed's intention that we begin to look at our federal money and our program outcomes in the same time. We start thinking about what are the outcomes that we're getting for the federal dollars that we invest in education. Again, back to this emphasis on guidance and technical assistance for improvement, planning, for school outcomes in the domain of LEAs. This is one of the larger or more significant changes that I think our local education agencies will be seeing, at least in the first year. TEA and the ESCs and all of our other organizations around the state are really trying to figure out how will we increase local agency capacity to offer guidance and tech support to schools. And tech support here, I don't mean IT like technology support. It's just a friendly way of saying technical assistance, okay? So ESSA requires that LEAs engage in comprehensive planning and coordinated spending. This is not a new requirement for us. It was the same requirement under NCLB. It is perhaps a renewed emphasis. And there are several changes in ESSA that facilitate the types of coordinated planning, coordinated spending that is going to be expected of LEAs in the years coming forward. First on that list would be, throughout statute in ESSA, there is a significant increase on well-rounded educational opportunities as compared to NCLB's focus on core academic content. To facilitate that work on well-rounded educational opportunities, LEAs are receiving the Title IV Part A Student Support and Academic Enrichment Grants, what we have been calling, or what you've heard called, the Title IV Block Grant. And a section of the presentation later will provide you more information about applying for Title IV Part A grant funds and anticipated amounts of that money. The second change that we know is supporting flexibility in spending, and we're all figuring out what that may look like, is the change in Title I Part A supplement not supplant from a specific cost test to a methodology test. And in this methodology test, LEAs are going to be required to document, write down, have a proven written process by which you're ensuring that Title I funds are being provided as supplement to your state and local money. This change on supplement not supplant to a methodology test as compared to a specific cost test is only applicable to Title I Part A. Title I-C, I-D, 2, 3, and 4 all have standard supplement not supplant requirements. A third change in ESSA to greater facilitate, to allow more flexibility for school districts in how they're using their Title I money is the change in ranking and serving your schools based on low income. ESSA gives you a new flexibility and allows you to rank and serve your schools, as you always have, but then to take those high schools in which 50% or more of your students are low income and move them up above elementary schools and middle schools that may serve higher percentages of low-income students, and then to serve those high schools. You still have to calculate your per pupil allocation, and there's no more resources or no more funding to do this. However, it allows you some flexibility in making decisions about funding high schools, which historically can be more expensive because of the technology, because of the types of services that we provide high school students. Throughout ESSA, throughout statute, you're going to hear consistent reference to the LEA Consolidated Plan, the Local Agency Consolidated Plan. LEAs in Texas have always had a consolidated plan and did so under NCLB. It was your consolidated e-grants application. And LEAs are completing the LEA ESSA Consolidated Plan, e-grants plan, and that is your LEA plan. The egress application is probably your best resource and tool for applying for ESSA funds in the state of Texas. It is designed in such a way to offer you as much embedded guidance as possible. It is driven by best practices and improvement planning. It helps the applicant align state and local plans, the types of strategies that local agencies choose, aligning to the state consolidated plan. It is designed to help you coordinate your money, coordinate your federal programs, focus on student-driven outcomes, and it's designed to help you with performance monitoring throughout the year, which culminates in evaluating your programs to determine if you will continue to implement those programs or pick different strategies in the next school year. As stated at the very beginning of our session today, we have 3 new schedules in the ESSA Consolidated application, and the rest of our time together will be on those 3 schedules. The first one we're going to start with is Schedule PS 3001, Needs Assessment, Priorities, and Program Outcomes. Okay, so the embedded guidance within Schedule PS 3001 is essentially a format, a protocol for best practices and improvement planning processes. If your LEA has a comprehensive improvement planning process, if you have a strategy, written down policy and procedure for how you are conducting a comprehensive needs assessment, then please continue to do that. The intent of adding this information in this presentation is for those LEAs that have not recently conducted a rigorous comprehensive needs assessment or have engaged in improvement planning throughout recently in a comprehensive, more rigorous way. So if you have something, please, by all means, if it's meeting best practices, the requirements of Title I, please go forward with it. The first couple of slides I have here review the protocol embedded in Schedule PS 3001. So we collect and analyze student outcome data. This is quantitative data. We draft problem statements and identify root causes. We complete a comprehensive needs assessment where we add qualitative data to our quantitative data to have a fuller picture of the needs and the nuances on our schools, at our schools. We research effective practices with the greatest potential to improve student outcomes, draft SMART performance measures and goals. And this is a new step, or a new order of the steps from what we did under IDCLB. We slow down and we look at all available funding sources across state, local, and funding streams so that we can identify every resource available for the program or activity that we are trying to implement. This means thinking about your Title I money and your state comp ed money. It means considering what you're doing with your state bilingual funds, but also thinking about how your Title III resources align, support, and do not duplicate those services. Throughout the improvement planning process, school teams are documenting their work in continuous improvement plans. LEAs are compiling, aligning, summarizing the work of all of their planning teams. You're inserting that information in Schedule PS 3001. So PS 3001 is completed at the LEA level. Throughout the year, LEAs are supporting their schools as they're regularly monitoring progress, and also at the end of the year, they're facilitating an annual evaluation of the strategies that were implemented. So this work feeds directly into Schedule PS 3001. And at the very top of, or on this slide, you'll see a screenshot of the very top of Schedule PS 3001. Notice that it tells you that if you have an improvement required plan, a turnaround plan, or if your district has participated in the Lone Star Governance Continuous Improvement model, you should start with those documents. PS 3001 is divided into 5 sections. Section 1 through 4 are one for each of TEA's strategic priorities. Section 5 is for other locally identified needs not related to TEA's 4 strategic priorities. LEAs are identifying needs across their districts and inserting that information in line with the 4 strategic priorities of the Commissioner, or TEA. If you haven't been able to attend one of the Commissioner's meetings around the state, if you haven't seen or talked to anyone about the 4 strategic priorities, here's a screenshot again of what those are. Recruiting, supporting, retaining teachers and principals, building a foundation in reading and math, particularly for early childhood and elementary school students, connecting high school to career and college, and finally, improving low-performing schools. Notice that once you've conducted a comprehensive needs assessment and you've identified those specific needs on your campuses and at your LEA, you're inserting that information into Schedule PS 3001 aligned to the Commissioner's 4 strategic priorities. You are required to complete all sections of Schedule PS 3001. You are not required to have a need aligned to the 4 Commissioner strategic priorities. As this slide shows, you can identify, you can click on the radio dial button to the left of the statement, no needs identified, and move on to strategic priority number 2 if you do not have a need in the area of recruiting, supporting, and retaining teachers. If your LEA has a thorough, rigorous, comprehensive needs assessment and improvement planning process that lasts throughout the year, it may be possible for you to conduct that process, identify your needs, and then organize those needs you found through your regular process into or align to the Commissioner's 4 strategic priorities. Basically, take out a piece of paper, write the strategic priorities across the top of a piece of paper, and organize the needs that you found into those categories, and then carry it to your 3001. So we know that schools throughout the year are researching and selecting strategies to address their locally identified needs, and they're completing that information, documenting it in a continuous improvement plan or campus improvement plan. And the model or the format of that plan is now and has always been a LEA decision to decide what you want the campus plans to look like and the types of information you want it to contain. At the same time, we know that LEAs, ESCs, professionals, trainers, consultants, professional service providers, a number of people are facilitating, are helping schools to identify and implement best practices that are supporting maximizing student outcome at your schools. LEAs are responsible for compiling, summarizing, aligning, collecting all of that information about the strategies that your schools will be implementing to address these needs and inserting it in Schedule PS 3001. On this example, I've decided, my school district has decided, that I have a need for instructional leadership to better facilitate the observation feedback cycle for my principals. To address that need, I'm going to implement an Instructional Leadership Academy for Principals, and I've inserted that in line 1. As I move to the right across the screen, I have to tell myself, filling out the application, need to state whether this is a new program or a continued program or activity. New means completely new. If this was a program that was funded under NCLB in a previous year, it is not a new program on Schedule PS 3001. Finally, in the last column on this slide, you are inserting the amount of funding that you have budgeted for this program or activity. eGrants will auto-calculate all of the funding that you have inserted for programs and activities aligned to, related to each of the strategic priorities, and provide that information for you. Schools are responsible for, they have a new ownership with, facilitating the selection of, the research for, the identifying research-based strategies for locally identified needs. There are resources both published by TEA and through quality vetters at the national level that will give you good starting places to begin to have those conversations with your administrators, with your principals, with your parents, with your planning teams about what high-quality evidence or high-quality programs look like. A recent one that has come out is Evidence for ESSA, and it is hosted by Johns Hopkins University School of Education. The website is listed on this slide, and you can also sign up for email updates on to receive regularly through the Evidence for ESSA contact page, and the link is listed on this slide. As always, What Works Clearinghouse is a organization associated with the Information of Education Sciences. What Works Clearinghouse has tried to revamp their interface to make searching for and identifying research-based programs easier, to be a bit more user-friendly. And What Works Clearinghouse is a great place to start with gathering baseline research to help your planning teams. In addition to IES, IES also has, or the Department of Ed also operates the Institution of Education Sciences, National Center for Special Education Research. And again, this is another quality source for researching best practices within schools. IES has a lookup page that allows you in one location to look up products and publications from any of their regional laboratories across the nation, from IES and from ISES. On the lookup page, some sample publications to review are the What's Known, the Intervention Reports, and the Topics Reports. These provide you 1 to 2 pages of baseline overview on what's known on something like accelerated reading programs. So these are good baseline places to start working with your schools. Finally, as we know that the landscape of education in DC is changing every day, this is the link to signing up and having daily emails, or at least updates weekly or daily, on changes from the Department of Education's listserv. On this example, I've signed up for top news from the Department of Education, early learning, K through 12 education, and ESSA updates. This is a good resource so that you can keep in the loop on what's happening to us, what's happening to changes with the funding. As we know, we have had a few emails and a few comments about what's going to happen to Title IIA going forward. This would be a good place to get that information. In addition to the quality research programming, quality research publications listed above, TEA is trying to provide LEAs in Texas additional supports outside of the embedded guidance in the application, more resources, more publications to better facilitate implementation of research-based practices. So you've always had the program guidelines and the application instructions. Those are and still will be available on the TEA Grants Opportunity page. This is the basic overview of what the purpose of the program is, what I can and cannot do with my money, the students that I'm supposed to serve with the specific federal program, the allowable types of activities for the program that you're applying for. In addition, you've always had program-specific provisions and assurances. Those will continue to be on the TEA Grants Opportunity page. This is really the fine print, the details of your grant award contract with TEA and the Department of Education. The agency is providing additional resources on recommended uses of funds, on best practices, and allowable activities and expenses. The first one of these is the new strategic priority guides, 4 sets of priority guides, one for each of the TEA strategic priorities, which summarizes allowable activities by federal program in one place. It provides you a list of recommended uses from TEA, which are initiatives shown to have maximum input or maximum impact on achieving student outcomes. Then it also provides you some summary information on best practices. The priority guides are trying to do several things at once for you. They're trying to give you basic information for printing, distributing, sharing, starting conversations with your administrators, with your schools, with your LEAs. They're trying to provide you an overview of all of your pots of money so that you can use this document to start thinking about coordinating spending. And it's trying to provide you contacts and additional information about those recommended initiatives. Each of the recommended initiatives, and I believe that as of today there are 20, throughout the spring and summer, we will continue to add more. These recommended initiative pages and all of the resources will continue to be updated and posted on a transition to ESSA webpage hosted by the Department of Grants, Compliance, and Oversight. But each of the recommended initiatives are linked to a resource page. So the 21 initiatives have a resource link to them. And the resource pages are designed to model what we've seen in evidence for ESSA, or model the types of information and the types of detail that we've seen in a summary from What Works for Education Clearinghouse. So the recommended initiatives will give you a program description. It will tell you which strategic priority this initiative addresses. It will tell you what funding sources you can pay for some of these activities out of. It will provide you student outcome goals in SMART goal format. It will give you additional resources and materials that you can find either online or in hard print. And finally, it will give you, and most importantly, it will give you the contact information of the person at TEA that you should call for more information. So this is actually moving back into 3001, and I put this slide in here specifically to talk about the fact that 3001 cannot, there's no way you can put the level of detail that is in the campus plans, in those plans that actually have the information needed to implement. It can't fit in the 3001. This slide is designed to show you that there are several types of interventions that we provide our schools there are academic interventions, there's tutoring. Tutoring happens in all types of formats. We have small group tutoring in a ratio of 6:1. We have one-to-one tutoring. We have push-in tutoring. We have pull-out tutoring. We have before school, after school, evening school tutoring. We have star camps in the summertime, and we have homework classes or homework sessions at lunchtime. But they're all tutoring designed to increase the number of instructional minutes that we're providing our students. We don't need that level of detail in the consolidated application. Ultimately, the consolidated application, after you input the programs and activities that you have selected to address a specific need, the application will push you back or move us back to identifying the amount of funds that we have allocated or that we anticipate spending for each strategic priority by federal program. So we need to insert the amount of, in my example, the amount of Title II Part A funding that will be used to support instructional leadership academies for principals. I would ask that you think big picture in terms of the types of supports that you provide teachers and principals, the types of recruiting, retention, support, and training you provide teachers and principals. At one of the cluster sites just last week, there was an individual there whose LEA provided a 2-day best practice training session for principals and assistant principals using Title I funds. And that's a support. So you may have different types of supports that you provide teachers out of a number of these different funds. If there's one screen that I want you to pay particular attention to right now in the webinar, it's this screen. This is the new, and there's one for each of the 5 sections of the consolidated application. These are really your performance measures. So there's one for each of the strategic priorities, and it requires you to, in the second column from the left, insert the federal program for which you're going to be paying for this initiative. In the third column, it requires you to develop a 1-year SMART goal, 1-year student outcome focused SMART goal. And I'll give you the model for this now, and there'll be more examples coming up. The model for a student outcome SMART goal is the percentage of what students know or can do will increase from X% to Y% by Z date. In this column entitled Performance Measure, that's 1 year, so my Z equals 1 year. And remember that student outcome focus equals what students know or can do as compared to adult performance measures or professional performance measures or parents. So it's specifically about students. Sorry, I'm counting. The fourth column over is your baseline data, and it is your control group, your students and where they are today. The fifth column, and this is new, is your long-term 3 to 5 year goal, student outcome goal. And the formula for that is the percentage of what students know or can do will increase from X% to Y% by Z, and Z is a period of between 3 to 5 years. Notice that in the last column on my example, I've included several data sets, and it is designed to take into consideration my long-term goal. The expectation within Schedule 3001 is that LEAs will develop 3 to 5 SMART goals. This is a new way of thinking again, because when I have written or looked at a CIP, when I've reviewed a CIP, when I've looked at a district improvement plan, there tends to be more than 3 to 5 SMART goals, but the intent here is that districts will select 3 to 5, 3 being the sweet spot. This is because organizational management research data on outcome performance shows us that if an organization has 3 goals, 3 annual goals, they will likely complete 2. If an organization has 5, they will likely complete 1. And often if you have more than 5 goals, you may not complete any. Think of this as moving away from a shotgun scatter approach to a really targeted strategy where you're picking the top 3 or 5 things that you want to do to move the needle for your students, and those are the things that you're paying for or you're using your ESSA money for. If you're funding a SMART goal, or you have one SMART goal from which you have more than one federal program contributing to funds, you can insert an additional grant title for the SMART goal by hitting the return key on your keyboard. If you want to add a new SMART goal under a strategic priority, use the Add Line tab. Please be aware of the goal that you write in the performance monitoring section, performance measure section. This will be the goal that TEA is monitoring throughout the year to see how you're doing on using your ESSA money to effectively move the needle for your students. This slide provides you the formula for a SMART goal again. It gives you a location on TEA's website in the Lone Star Governance Participant Manual that will give you 2 or 3 pages of additional SMART goals, and it gives you the criteria for a SMART goal: specific, measurable, attainable, results-focused, and time-bound. The next schedule that we're going to talk about is Schedule PS 3107, and this is your Title IV Part A Student Support and Academic Enrichment Program. And you've probably heard of this, and you've heard others talking about this, calling it the Title IV Part A Block Grant. And that's what this Student Support and Academic Achievement Grant is. It's a formula grant to LEAs based on an equitable share of Title I Part A funds within the state. The minimum award that an LEA will receive is $10,000. To give you some idea of what the Title IV Part A block grant allocations look like across the state, assuming there's $50 million coming to the state, and this is an estimated amount because we're not completely sure what's going to happen in DC at this moment, approximately 125 LEAs will have a Title IV Part A block grant over $30,000. 434 LEAs will have a Title IV Part A block grant between $30,000 and $10,000, and 666 LEAs will only receive $10,000. If your grant is greater than $30,000, you are required to conduct a comprehensive needs assessment. 20% of your money must focus on one or more well-rounded educational opportunities. 20% must focus on safe and healthy student activities, and some amount of funding must support effective use of technology. You are limited to spending only 15% of your money on technology infrastructure. If your allocation is less than $30,000, LEAs are only required to meet one of the state set-asides, that is, well-rounded education opportunity, safe and healthy students, or support effective use of technology. Schedule 3107 is organized by the use of allowable funds that were listed in statute. So your allocation amount populates within E-grants, and the percentages are automatically calculated for the types of activities that you're going to be providing. In Part 2, the program requirements and assurances, in 2.1, you must mark one or the other with the date applicable of when you completed the comprehensive needs assessment. For 2.2, you have to mark one or the other. For 2.3, you must mark this assurance. 2.4 through 2.9, you likewise must mark them, indicating that you have read these and you have all this information. So for Part 3, the program description for well-rounded educational opportunities lists those options that were in statute. Notice that, again, numbers 1 through 4 are aligned to the TEA strategic priorities. You will be seeing this alignment across most, if not all, of the grants that are being released this year, or at least most of your ESSA money, and that alignment will continue to roll out across additional grants. The well-rounded educational opportunities section allows you to insert some other activity or program aligned to statute at the very bottom in number 12. So you can insert a program or activity that is aligned to the examples above and add lines as needed. The allowable activities for safe and healthy students did not have an option in statute to insert an other aligned program or activity, so that option is not available to you in the consolidated application for this section. In the section where you identify how you will support effective use of technology, it, like the well-rounded education opportunities, allows for you to insert an other aligned activity within that section. And finally, for our last schedule today, Schedule PS 3099, Private School Services. To meet the private school services requirement and facilitate the calculation of equitable services to private schools, the following changes have been made to the ESSA Consolidated application. The allocation for services is a general formula that is embedded in Schedule 3099. It is based on the number of private school students from low-income families who reside in Title I eligible public school attendance areas, participating or skipped. Under the old rule in NCLB, private school students must also get equitable share of district-wide instruction, parental involvement, and professional development set-asides. Under the new rule, the private school calculation, the private school set-aside, must be calculated before any allowable expenditure and transfer by the LEA. District-wide instruction, parental involvement, professional development are included in this first calculation. As with NCLB, ESSA requires consultation with private schools. The LEA must initiate consultation with a proposal for private services. The LEA must contact all PNPs located within the LEA's boundaries. Consultations must be timely, meaningful, and must discuss the size and scope of the equitable services that the LEA will provide private schools. It must include the method or source of poverty data used for the eligibility of services. It must discuss the delivery of services. It must discuss the two options for use of private school set-aside funding, either pooling the money to use for students with the greatest educational need, or school-by-school allocation, where the money follows the child to the private school for educationally needy children in that school. Remember that the final decision regarding consultation and the delivery of services is made by the LEA after consultation. If the LEA disagrees with private school officials regarding the provision of equitable services through a contracted third party, the LEA will provide written notice and analysis and reasons to the private school officials. All parties should reach an agreement on how to provide equitable and effective services for eligible private school children. LEAs must provide timely and meaningful consultation with appropriate officials, and a new position at TEA, state-level ombudsman, is required under ESSA to mediate and facilitate effective relationships between LEAs and private schools. LEAs must obtain written affirmation that timely and meaningful consultation occurred. LEAs must also give option of signing a written affirmation indicating that timely and meaningful consultation did not occur, or that the program design is not equitable with respect to eligible school children. So, LEAs may be required to review, revise, and reconsider any consultation that was previously done. And I know that was on the slide, but I just wanted to add that as well. So we've done the very quick walkthrough of the information slides in an attempt to save as much time as possible for questions. So the first question is, I would like some more information regarding supplement, not supplant, for Title I. Now, may we now use those Title I funds to pay for things we paid for with local funds previously? I understand all the other Title I program supplement, not supplant stays the same, but I'm confused about Title I. Title I is no longer a specific cost test, so you have to show that there was a school-wide or substantial benefit received over and above with the supplies and materials you provided by Title I. You do not have to provide detailed information about whether or not that item was purchased from local funds in a previous school year. More information on supplement, not supplant, will be released in future information documents from TEA. The easiest thing, or one of the easiest ways to think about it, is that Title I has become much more like school-wide Title I. And you have to show the amount of state and local money that schools receive, and then show that Title I was given as a supplement to that state and local money. Next question, just to clarify, there should only be 3 to 5 goals total on PS 3001, not 3 to 5 goals on each needs program or activity. Yes, that's correct. We're looking for 3 to 5 total goals, those 3 most important goals that you intend to use your ESSA money for. Notice that if there's only 3 to 5 goals and you have 3, you will not have a goal for each one of the 4 Commissioner's strategic priorities. But you need to have at least one in sections 1 through 4, or you need to complete Part 5. but 3 to 5 goals total. Is the Title V for all districts? The Title V is for districts receiving a Title I Part A funding allocation. Okay. Next question. On Part 2 of PS 3107, if you get less than 30,000 and select only one of the set-asides, say safe and healthy students, do you have to select the assurances for the ones you don't plan to spend money on? For example, well-rounded education technology or education technology. That is an e-grant application question that I can take back to Grants Administration and Annie Molina and get that information for you. If you would like to email me your email directly, I'll make sure that I get that information to you directly. Okay. Next question. In regard with Title IV, may the money be spent only at the district level, or does it have to be dispersed to campuses? It is money that is allocated, given to the district for those needs. In regard to Title IV, well, we just answered that. It's money allocated to the district as a block. Okay. How do we apply for the Title IV block grant? It is in your 2017 ESSA Consolidated application, and it's scheduled PS 3107. The last question, does this apply to charter schools? And I would need a little bit more clarification on that. What specific part applies to charter schools? If you're receiving ESSA funding, Okay, I'm sorry, I was trying to get a little bit more help on figuring out where the private school question came in so I could get more info to answer it. Are charter schools required to complete the private school section? That will be an e-grants application question that is going to be discussed by Annie Molina in the full e-grants training. Those e-grant trainings start mid-April. Actually, the first one, I believe, starts at the end of March and will be conducted as on-site and webinar trainings and at conferences throughout the state. If you'll email me that question, I'll get that to Annie and we can move forward with it. Are LEAs to have 3 to 5 needs and 3 to 5 SMART goals performance measures? Yes. If you may have more needs, you may have one program that is addressing more than one need. You should have 3 to 5. You probably don't need to identify and document every need because we know you have needs that you're not funding, not paying for ESSA, not using ESSA funds to pay for. Identify only those needs for which you are using ESSA money to provide programs and activities to meet those needs. Is there a draft of the application posted anywhere? I would like to see the changes and present to our participants prior to application becoming live. The application draft has not been posted yet. It will be made available on the Transition to ESSA webpage that will be housed under the Grants Compliance and Oversight Department, and that is being organized and brought live as we speak. So there will be an example of that there when the transition page is open. Where do I get a copy of the ESSA published guidance? That published guidance will also be on the Transition to ESSA webpage. I advise you that the published guidance between now and possibly mid-summer are ongoing draft versions. We continue to release them and show them to LEAs. We show them to ESCs. We try to get input and feedback and fine-tune to make sure that we're meeting all the requirements of those documents, but they are going to be posted on the ESSA transitions page. The hard copy of this PowerPoint is available for you. It was actually uploaded for you to access as a PDF. The final version of this PowerPoint as well, it's a work in progress. We're trying to give you as much information as possible, will be available from the ESSA Transition to ESSA page. The next question is, will we issue a summary of FAQs related to the new application? And the answer is yes. We are using all of the questions you have today, all of the questions from the live cluster site trainings to start developing that FAQ so that we can release it. If a district does not have any private nonprofits within their boundaries, is consultation with an adjoining district private nonprofit necessary? Is there a place to check here that there are none within your boundaries? There will be a place on the consolidated application to check that there are no private nonprofits within your boundaries and that you're not serving private nonprofits. Has the budget for the grant changed, and where all items are listed on the PS 3001? It was categorized by object code. PS 3001 is not your budget schedule. Your budget schedules have not changed. Your PS 3001 is your needs assessment, prioritizing, and student outcome model. It is a shell for starting to develop a process for monitoring your money and your student outcomes simultaneously throughout the year. The amount of money that you're budgeting in the schedule PS 3001 is your estimated expenditure for those activities. You will not be amending 3001 anytime your budgeted amount for those programs or activities changes. It is not connected within eGrants to your budget pages. It is the start of your improvement planning shell. There will be a compliance report at the end of the year generated that shows how much money was spent for those programs and activities aligned to the strategic priorities, and also there will be an ongoing review of your performance measure to see how you're doing with those with student outcomes. Will every LEA receive Title IV Part A block grant? Also, is Title II becoming a part of ESSA application, and what if that is currently done under a shared service arrangement? Title II has always been a part of the NCLB application. If you are a member of a shared service arrangement, that you will more than likely continue to be a member of the shared service arrangement. Title IV is available to those districts that have a Title I Part A grant. Next question, is the SPED consolidated grant application folded into this application, or is it still separate? The SPED IDEA application is still separate. It is not folded into this. This is only your ESSA money. Okay, Title V was mentioned in one question. Did you mean Title IV? Yes, I did. I'll fix that. That's what I meant, Title IV. Next question, will the answers be provided after this session? We will have all the list of questions, and I will work with Corey, work with Anita. We will get answers to all of the questions and try to distribute those answers to everybody. the handout section, the question is, where is the handout section? I'm assuming that you're asking about the handouts that are going to be on the Transition to ESSA webpage, and that will be off of the TEA website. It has not gone live today, but it is pending going live in the next couple of days. All of the handouts will be there. If you go to the TEA website, go to the Grants Administration page, or just Google in Transition to ESSA on the TEA webpage, and you'll find it. To clarify, here's the next question. To clarify, all LEAs will now receive Title IV Part A funds. We had not received Title IV funds recent years in our consolidated application. It's a new grant program, so you would not have received it before. This is the first year of ESSA. Not all LEAs will receive, but if you have a Title I Part A grant, you are assured a minimum of a $10,000 Title IV Part A allocation. Next question, may Title IV funds be spent all on campuses and not just Title I campuses? That is a question I will take back to programs and get clarification for you to decide, so that they can clarify whether or not it has to be a Title I specific campus. Okay, will the FAQs be published to refer to a TEA website? The FAQs will be published and will be made available on TEA's website. There will be a notification, a letter, some sort of email distribution or to the administrator addressed to let you know that the FAQs have been published and provide you the link to accessing those. Those FAQs will likewise be on the Transition to ESSA webpage that is coming live. Okay, next question. Does this information reflect the recent repeal of certain parts of ESSA? If so, how? No, not yet. We continue to, as we struggle with changes at the federal level, as we struggle with getting your funding to you, especially those folks who have staff funded on a 12-year calendar. We are moving forward with the best information that we have as of this moment. Everything at Washington, everything at that level of what ESSA would look like is still up in the air. ESSA could be very different next year, but as of this year, this is what we have. Okay, next question. When is the 2017 ESSA grant going to be open for LEAs? It's open the same schedule period as it was last year. The schedule for the ESSA application is no different than it was for the NCLB Consolidated, and it will follow the same schedule. Next question, do the goals of PS 3001 have to be written with Title I campuses in mind only, or district-wide goals? They're your LEA's goals. You're funding it with your ESSA money, so keep that in mind, but they can be your district goals. The programs and activities are the ones that you're providing eligible students, eligible schools, eligible activities. Okay, next question. On PS 3001, can activities that do not fall under the 4 strategic priorities be listed, or are you only listing activities under Part 5 if no activities are listed under any of the 4? You can list the others under Part 5 if you are not required to complete Part 5. If you have a goal and a need and a priority under Parts 1 through 4, but you can still complete Part 5. That's your option. Okay, next question. So basically, we will be utilizing our district improvement plan in order to complete the Title I Part A grant application. It depends on your district improvement planning process. Do you have a district improvement planning process that, a written process that aligns your campus planning teams, collects information from all of your schools, summarizes it, compiles it, aligns it? If so, that could be the document that you're using. Next question, are all the Title I components the same? Yes. Things don't necessarily go away, they just sort of move around a bit. Okay. Next question, if the board developed goals, Lone Star training, should we use those as our 3 goals within the application? If they have developed goals that are student outcome focused goals, and that is the intent of your board and your superintendent to have everybody line up to those student outcome focused goals, yes, you should have some, if not using them verbatim, they definitely should be lining up. Okay, next question that I can actually answer easily, what is Susan's email? susan.patterson@tea.texas.gov. And I'm getting ready to put the slide that has my contact information up right after the Q&A session. Next question, can Title IV be used for parental involvement? Title IV, go back to the schedule, those identified activities that are listed in statute in PS 3107, and see how those activities are really about delivering well-rounded educational opportunities to students, student activities, student resources. Okay. Okay. There's a lot of questions about whether or not the charter needs to complete the private nonprofit schedule, about the consultation with charter schools and private schools and what that looks like. Please bear with me on that. The best I can do for you on those conversations is to make sure that I get all of your questions, get that information to the right person, to connect you with Annie Molina and some of the other staff and grants administration to make sure that I get you the right information, okay? I have the emails and contact information here. I'll make sure I get those answers for you. Okay, 1 or 2 more questions, and then we're going to sort of wrap it up. I know we have a lot going on, and I'll continue. We'll type up the answers and get them sent out. Class size reduction, a very common use of Title I and II funds, is not mentioned on the strategic priority chart. Is TEA discouraging districts from utilizing class size reduction, or is the strategic strategy going to be added to the strategic priority guide later? Class size reduction could be added to the strategic priority guide later. The question for you, Tammy, is what will be the student outcome focus of class size reduction? Is it going to be, are you going to do class size reduction for reading and math foundations? And if so, how is that facilitating building a foundation in reading and math? And you may be doing class size reduction, particularly in math or reading, because you just need smaller groups of students in order to do that type of instruction effectively. Or will your class size reduction be at the high school level, maybe, supporting smaller lab-based classes for career tech, for connecting high school to career and college? So it's still a doable activity. You could do class size reduction related to strategic priority number 4 with improving low-performing schools. If you feel a need, if your needs assessment and your student data shows that class size reduction and smaller group instruction is the strategy you want to use for improving student performance. Okay. We know that we have Title IV funds for 17-18, but have no assurance for Title IV funds for 18-19. This is true. Right now, with the way the shifts are happening at the federal government level, with the changes in what allocations look like day in and day out, we have this ESSA application with these funds for 17-18. Things could look dramatically different across all of the funds sooner than we think. So keep that in mind. Okay, next question. When will planning amounts be released? This is from Kelsey and Jamie. I do not have that information for you today. I am back with Corey later this afternoon. I can get that information for you. And likewise, that information will also be discussed as we are rolling out the full application training, which happens as soon as end of March. Next question, is the information shared here the same as the ESC ESSA in-person meetings that have been scheduled? The information here is summary overview, better suited for individuals that are not the federal programs officer, not completing the ESSA consolidated application, very high level, and much less in depth. If you are completing the consolidated application, if you're a federal programs officer or a compliance officer or a grant accountant, you might want to consider going to the cluster site trainings. Okay. Several folks would like to be added to the list for charter-related answers. I will make sure that we have all of the answers to these questions typed up and distributed to participants to make sure that everyone who's here today gets the information. And I'll make sure that it's vetted, okay? So, where do I ask a question? Okay. Keep scrolling down. I think we actually are at the end of our questions, and it's only 2:47, so we have about 13 minutes left. I do want to remind you that there's a survey at the end of the webinar that's going to autofill, and it's very important to us that you know, continuous improvement planning, this SMART goals and these types of priorities are not only your efforts this spring, they're ours at TEA too. So whatever you can tell us, whatever you can give me about what you did or didn't get, what you needed or you didn't need, please share that with me. A few more questions are coming in. When did you say that the transition to ESSA website will be online? It is in the works now. We're hoping that it's going to be up any day now. It's pushing forward ASAP. Okay, it's on its way. Next question, when will the performance measures be evaluated in the compliance report or the 18-19 application? When will the performance measures be evaluated? In the 17-18 compliance report, they will be evaluated in a compliance report that will be at the end of the grant year. That information may, in terms of the amount of money that you spent on those priorities, it may auto-load forward into next application. However, the compliance report is being designed. As soon as we have more information on what that looks like, it will be distributed and shared with all of our LEAs and charters and organizations across the state. Will there be more site trainings added to the San Antonio and Austin area? I can say that there are additional full application trainings that are being scheduled now for across the state. This information or parts of this information will be added to that full application training. More people wanting to be added to the list about charter schools, and I'll definitely do that. Will comparability still be a factor? Yes, it will. Will TEAs notify LEA when the Lone Star governance is posted? The additional, there was a bulletin or TCAA letter that came out just within the past week or so about additional training sessions. The Lone Star Governance has a page of its own, and you can find more information there. Have locations been identified for the full application training? The specific locations have not been identified, but it looks like we should have 4 or 5. They are being finalized, and you will get that information within the next week to a week and a half. The link to the Transition to ESSA page is not up yet. It will be posted from the Grants Administration website shortly. If you just go to the TEA webpage, you should be able to find it. Just Google Transition to ESSA. So with that said, we have just a few more minutes. Will eGrants training be provided as a session at ASEC conference? Yes, it will. More emails of folks who wanted to be added to the list, and I'll definitely take care of that. We have 9 minutes left, so I'm going to count us out to 3. Hold on one second. We have one more need for a clarification here on our side. Yes, sure. If you want to add your email address, they just send it, type it in? Okay. If you want to add your email address, type it in. We'll make sure we have the entire list. Therefore, we can distribute all the information today, charter, not charter, private, nonprofit, Title IV, Part A, the whole shebang, okay? So type in your list, and we are going to stop the presentation at this moment. I see tons of folks typing in their information. We will continue to get that information and continue to have all those emails on our list. Once again, I have just put up the contact information for the Special Projects team. I know you know Anita Villarreal, who has worked in and around, out in the field, has been a part of TEA for 30 years or more. She is my partner in this project. And her email address and contact information, phone number, is on the slide. And my name is Susan Patterson, and I'm with the Grants Compliance and Oversight Department. My email address is here, and my phone number. Please feel free to email or call, and if I don't know the answer, I'll work hard to get the question answered and get it back to you. Thank you.